Okay, so we just wait maybe another 30 seconds and we begin because there's people slowly filtering in. Thank you. Okay, so I think that's everyone in. So welcome everyone. Delighted to have you here tonight. So my name is Dr. Tim Crowley and I'm Program Coordinator of our BSc in Global Business and Pilot Studies. So today I'm joined by Jenny Eustace, Captain Philip Smythe, and we also have Holly Corby, who is a current cadet, and they'll also be speaking later on in this webinar. So just to get us off and running, just a little agenda there to highlight what we'll be covering tonight. So first of all, we'll have an introduction. We're going to move then on to the program structure, and we're going to look at the CUTI, where you look at the simulator assessment and interview. We look at the medical, the entry criteria, costs, and key dates. That will be very important for you. And then we're going to have the AFTA perspective, where Captain Philip Smythe and also current cadet Holly Corby will be speaking. And then finally, we'll wrap up the evening by doing a Q&A. So hopefully we'll have the slides wrapped up in about 20, maybe 25 minutes. And then we'll have the AFTA representative speak. And there is a Q&A function, so feel free to pop in any questions you may have throughout this webinar. So just to, I suppose, start off, we have introductions. So from the Munster Technological University side of things, or MTU, we have Katie Power, who is the head of department. Unfortunately, Katie wasn't able to make it tonight. And myself, so I'm program coordinator, so Tim Crowley. Within the Atlantic Flight Training Academy, we have Captain Mark Casey, who is CEO and head of training, and unfortunately wasn't able to make it tonight also. However, we do have Captain Philip Smythe, who's safety manager with us, and we also have Jenny Eustace, who's the sales and marketing manager. So I suppose a big benefit of AFTA is that they have a highly experienced and quite an in-depth number of trainers involved. So you get to meet a lot of people up in the AFTA setup. So a little bit about Munster Technological University for anyone who may not know us. So the Department of Marketing and International Business, where this course is based, is home to almost 1,000 students, and they study in programs from marketing, digital marketing, sales, international business, as well as a bespoke number of programs for aviation professionals. So currently we actually have 3 different programs that are targeted at the aviation industry. With 45 lecturers, the department specializes in offering authentic assessment mechanisms that ensure the student learning is relevant and interesting. And in 2020, the department won the award for Best Business Collaboration at the Education Awards. And in 2021, we received a Delta Award for Excellence in Teaching and Learning Enhancement. And just a few pictures of our campus so you can visualize it. We're quite lucky. We are quite a big campus, and we have a lot of space and a lot of pitches. So we also offer a lot of opportunity to play different sports as well. So moving on to the Atlantic Flight Training Academy, we have, as I mentioned, the AFTA representatives, which we'll talk a bit more about AFTA later on tonight. But just to give you a brief insight, AFTA was founded, and is an ESA approved training organization established in 1995 by CEO and head of training Mark J. Casey. AFTA have trained over 2,200 graduates who are now flying worldwide for airlines from Aer Lingus, Norwegian, you have Ryanair, Qatar Airways, BA, Emirates, Globe Air, CityJet, a very, very, very big and impressive list of AFTA graduates who are flying for these companies. AFTA is located at Cork International Airport and has a satellite airport or satellite base, which is based in Waterford. AFTA operates one of Europe's most modern and youngest fleet of aircraft, including Cessna 172s, Diamond DA-42s, you have the Piper Senecas, the Stingsby, and a Blanca Super Decathlon also. Their simulator fleet consists of the Piper Seneca simulator, Diamond DA-42 simulators, and a Boeing 737 NG simulator also. And there is another 737 simulator that will be up and running very soon. Their on-site aircraft maintenance facility ensures our fleet is always meticulously maintained, maximizing safety and minimizing any training delays. So on the next slide, if we can go, there we go. There are just a few pictures there of the training, the airport inside the 737 simulator, and also two Diamond DA-42s in flight. Now, their fleet, as I mentioned, is very impressive, and I was very lucky that I was able to have a tour of their base a couple of weeks ago. On the left, you have the Cessna 172. You have the Piper Seneca in the middle, and the top right there, you have the Diamond DA-42, which I was lucky enough to go up in. Great experience. And below that, you have the Slingsby, which is used for the upset prevention training, which a lot of my current students are really looking forward to. I'm not sure they'll be looking forward to when they get into the plane, because it is quite agile, and they will they'll be spinning around a bit, I think, on that day. So there are just some pictures. Now onto the program structure. So this is a very unique program offered here at MTU, and it's very exciting. I really enjoy being part of this program. So it is broken up. Stage 1 or year 1, you're on campus at MTU Cork. So at this stage, you are learning about global business modules, which include you're looking at marketing, you are looking at IT management, global business, communication, culture studies, you have technological maths, and you also have accounting. Now, if you're not a big fan of accounting, that's fine. It will be basic. It's just to give you that insight into the business side of aviation. So that's year 1 on campus. And we also offer the opportunity to study a language. So we have German, we have French, and we also have Spanish. So what you do is you'll graduate, or you won't graduate just yet, sorry. You'll finish up first year around mid-May. And by June, you will be going to AFTA, all going to plan. So years 2 and 3 will be based at Cork Airport in the flight school. At this stage, you will be spending about 18 months learning how to become a pilot. You'll be looking at your PPL, which is your private pilot license, your ATPL. You are also looking at multi-engine piston rating, aviation regulation and policy, multi-crew cooperation, and the upset recovery or upset prevention recovery training, as I mentioned, and your multi-engine instrument ratings as well. So Philip will talk a little bit more about this in detail later on tonight, but just giving you that insight that years 2 and 3 are away from MTU, and you're purely learning to become a pilot. After your 18 months, to 20 months, you will all going to plan. You'll have your pilot's license, and you will be eligible to join an airline and fly as a first officer. So year 4, this course or this program is done online. And this is basically done because we know that generally you will be employed as a pilot. You could be working anywhere in the world. And we do this online to give you the opportunity to finish off your degree from, it could be Ireland, it could be Norway, or it could even be Qatar. It doesn't matter. You can do this online. So the lectures are done live. However, they're also recorded. So if you are working or you're unable to actually tune in for the live lecture, you can watch it at your own convenience and you won't miss out. So once year 4 is done, you will then graduate with your Global Business and Pilot Studies Level 8 Honours degree from Munster Technology University. So it is a very unique program. The main thing I like to highlight is that you're into MTU in first year. You join the course mid-September, and by June, the following June, you'll be at AFTA. So you're looking at, it's less than 9 months really before you're flying. So there's a big benefit in that sense. You're up in the sky a little bit sooner than you will be with other courses. So that is just an overview of the program. I have a picture here of my current cohort of first years. So you can probably see me on the left, and I'm also joined by Captain Kyle Johnston, and he came in for a quick talk with them, and we took a photo. So as you can see, there are a nice sized bunch. There's 22 in total, and I'm glad to say they're all smiling, and they're actually a great bunch, and every day their passion for aviation amazes me. So that is just our current bunch. So they will be off to AFTA next June. Now, the entry criteria for this program. So complete the Leaving Certificate examination with 6 subjects, a minimum result of H5 in 2 subjects and O6 or H7 in 4 other subjects. The 6 subjects must include maths and either English or Irish. And that's the main thing. So include in terms of your 6 subjects for the Leaving Cert, you must have maths, and that can be ordinary or higher level. There's no problem there. And you must need either English or Irish, one of those plus maths. You need those. Now, the points for this program this year were 318. So we're expecting to be in and around that area number for next September. With the entry criteria, most of the criteria is actually on the AFTA side, so for the actual flying element. So you must hold a valid EU PartMed Class 1 medical. You must complete an online CUTI assessment, and you must also do an AFTA assessment, which is split between the simulator, and you also have an interview with senior instructors. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the coming slides. So assessment process, dates, fees, and location. So by mid-February, all CO applicants will receive an email with detailed information about the assessment process. So everything I'm going to talk about here, there is a lot of information, but the main thing is that take in what you can, and if you miss anything, there's no problem. You can always email us, or you can also, I suppose, be comfortable knowing that you will get an email by mid-February with all of this laid out. So don't worry if you miss anything. So by the end of February, all interested applicants must pay an assessment fee of €60 to AFTA for the CUTI assessment, which is completed online and at home, and €300 for your simulator assessment and interview in AFTA, and that is based in the Airport Business Park in Cork. Bank details will be sent out in the first email. So your medical, AFTA will contact the Mater Hospital in Dublin to arrange your Class 1 medical once your assessment fee is received. The Class 1 medical is €650, and that's paid directly to the Mater Hospital on the day. So you must then email inquiries at afta.ie Monday to Friday, and they will send out the link to the CUTI test, and the link will be valid for 5 days. So as I mentioned, the CUTI test can be done at home, and it will take about 2 hours. So just a little bit more about this for anyone who may be interested. It's a computerized pilot screening system, which assesses work-related behavior, situational behavior, inductive logical thinking, reaction speed, spatial orientation, multitasking capability, and complex control. So you'll complete this CUTI assessment at home. You should allow at least 2 hours for this assessment. AFTA have recommended training aids that you can use to prepare, and these will be provided to you if you email, and preparation is very important here. So all CUTI assessments must be completed by mid-March. So once you've completed your CUTI assessment, please email inquiries at afta.ie to let them know and advise whether you are being assessed for the Ryanair Mentor Programme, Globe Air Mentor Programme, or the Integrated Programme. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but there is the opportunity to have a mentored programship here with AFTA. And as I said, I'll highlight that a little bit later on, and I'm sure Philip will highlight it as well in a bit more detail. You will then be invited to book your simulator assessment and interview. These will take place on the same day in AFTA. So AFTA will provide you with a list of dates in advance. Once you select a date, you'll be allocated a time slot, and you'll need to allocate about 3 hours to complete these assessments. After completing your interview, you will be told the result of your assessment for the integrated program on the day, on the spot. And if you've gone for the Ryanair or the Globe Air Mentor Programme, you'll be told within, I think, about 5 working days. And your results will then be passed on to MTU. So the simulator and the interview. So I suppose the first thing when people hear is that they have a simulator test, no one's expecting you to fly the plane perfectly. It's just a very basic insight to see how you actually handle the plane, how you take basic instructions, and how you can do some very basic maneuvers. So nobody's expecting you to be Tom Cruise, we'll say, in Top Gun. So this is just, as I said, to see your ability to handle aircraft, your learning curve, management and capacity, and they will also assess how well you take direction instruction from the instructor on the day. So that's the simulator side of things. You also have an interview. So the interview will focus on why you want to become an airline pilot and fly for Ryanair or Globe Air if you choose one of the mentor programs. The panel would also want to be sold on your commitment and dedication. So this is an elite profession, and it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of hard work. So it's just really making sure that you are dedicated to this profession. You will need to know how a jet engine and piston engine work, the different basic controls of an aircraft, the effect they have on the aircraft in flight and how an aircraft flies, principles of flight. You will also need to know some basic mental maths, which will also be part of the interview. This would usually involve time, distance, speed equations at a basic level. So once again, I was chatting to my current first years about their interview. And they said, it is basic. So don't be too worried, but preparation is also very important for this. You must be able to demonstrate the basics of aviation. And I think it's important that you highlight your passion for why you want to become a pilot. So that is just a little bit about the interview and the simulator assessment. Now, the medical. And this is something I know people get a bit worried about, but I was talking to Captain Kyle Johnson recently, who is a training and compliance manager, and he basically said that if you walk in and you walk back out of the medical, you're probably safe enough. So it's not something I would be overly worried about, but it is obviously extremely important. So in terms of the Class 1 medical, just to give you a bit of an insight what you'll be looking at. So on the day, the first thing you do is complete an application form at the centre. You'll have ophthalmology examination with a specialized consultant. You'll have an ECG, you'll have spirometry, audiogram, alcohol and drug testing. You'll also have bloods to include hemoglobin and cholesterol. So it's very important that you do not eat for 12 to 14 hours prior to your medical. Please drink plenty of water, but no tea, coffee, energy drinks, or anything other than water. So that's very important. General medical examination to include height, weight, blood pressure, and you also have another few little bits there that will be done by the aeromedical examiner. So please know from February 2019, as EASA regulations, all Class 1 initial applicants must be screened for drugs and alcohol. So that is just some things you'll be looking at in terms of your medical. Very important as well, on the day that you bring 2 photocopies with clear pictures of your passport. Driver's license will not be acceptable. So make sure you have your passport on 2 clear pictures. If you hold a PPL, which you don't have to obviously, but some people, currently one of my students has a PPL already. So if you do have any PPL or any other licenses, please bring 2 photocopies of them with you as well. And if you hold a previous medical cert, you need to have 2 photocopies with you. So I think the rule of 2, whatever you have, bring it twice. If you wear spectacles or have spectacles, please bring them with you. And please also bring your most recent prescription with you as well. So a lot to remember, but as I said, this will all be emailed to you as well. So this is I suppose, important here to make sure you have the key dates. So all these deadlines must be met. So these are important. So March 16th, 2023, you complete your CUTE and provide a deposit to AFTA. Late March and early April, you have your interview and your simulator assessment. By the 10th of May, you must have your medical assessment done. By the end of May, you'll have a provisional offer or rejection from MTU. So if you pass all of them and it's a green light, you will have a provisional offer from MTU to join the program. And late August then, based on your CEO points, you will then get your final and offer through the CEO system. So it's very important that you get everything sorted nice and early so that it will allow us to make that provisional offer. Now on to the cost side of things. So the assessment stage, the CUTE is €60, the AFTA assessment and flight simulator and interview, all that comes to €300. Now the fees, year 1 for MTU is just over 3,000, so €3,007 for MTU. Years 2 and 3 in AFTA are 82,500 for the integrated program, plus you pay €357 to MTU. Year 4, which is done online, for MTU is €3,500. So just a little asterisk there next to the year 2 and 3. So it's 82,500 for the integrated program. However, applicants also have the choice of enrolling on a Ryanair mentored flight training program at a cost of 88,000 or a Globair mentored program for 87,500 as an alternative to the integrated flight training program. So please note that there may be other fees payable as part of the flight training process, such as your Class 1 medical, which is €650. Examination fees can be up to €2,000, and type rating dependent on the employer is up to 30,000. And I'm sure Philip will cover that in a bit more detail. And don't worry, they're not all 30,000. So, and that will be discussed later on. Also, I just want to highlight the fact that while this is a 4-year program, you are at AFTA technically for 2 years, but you're considered an MTU student for all 4 years. So you'll have your student card, you'll be able to get student discounts. You'll also be able to use all the facilities at MTU, which include the library, the gym. You'll be able to book the AstroTurf pitches. My current first years, every Tuesday evening, we have a lab at 5 to 6, and at 6 o'clock they have the AFTA booked, and they're out playing even in the weather we currently have, which is not great. They'll be there playing tomorrow night. So there is a lot of benefits of being the student as well, and you'll get to maintain them for all 4 years. So they are the costs. Now, I'd like to pass you on to Captain Philip Smythe, who's going to talk a bit about AFTA. And we're also very lucky to have a current cadet, Holly Corby, who will also talk about her experiences in year 1 of this program and her experiences in year 2 as well. So I'd like to pass you on to Philip, first of all. So thanks, Philip.
Great. Thanks, Tim. That's very comprehensive, and it's the kind of information in AFTA we're all very, very well used to, but it's only when I hear somebody else describing it to me, I realize how much information's in there. So it's very important that you take it all in and come back again and pick up bits and pieces and everything else. But essentially, just to kind of kick off with the whole notion about a combined degree program with a flight training course as well too. A lot of people, when they come to Leaving Cert, and particularly with making decisions with their family, with their parents, are looking at the options about becoming professional pilots and saying, well, yes, it's a nice idea, but it would be nice to have a degree. And sometimes people would say, well, we'll get the degree first and then we'll worry about the pilot training afterwards. But this course is great because it mixes in all those options for you. So not only do you get your flight training qualification, you also get a degree as well too. So they very neatly complement each other. And it opens doors for people who are maybe moving on in their careers. We're looking at career prospects and promotional opportunities and moving into management. And it's a great way of enhancing their skills and their qualifications to move that direction as well too. So it's certainly great. And we know from the interest expressed so far, the uptake has been very, very strong, very, very positive. So we know that it's across the board. It's something now people are paying more attention to. And it takes away that element of doubt. Well, maybe we'll defer the idea of getting a pilot qualification and get the degree first, coming out of that at mid-20s or whatever, and then try to launch into a new training regime as well too. Whereas this blends the two of them together perfectly. So it's great. Tim has covered all the relevant points about the courses and the breakdown of it, and it's terrific information. Just to kind of dig in a little bit more and just to kind of expand it out a small bit. In relation to, if I start with the assessment process. Now, why is there an assessment process there? Well, mainly to find out if somebody has the interest and the aptitude to becoming commercial pilots in the first place. There's no point in any third level institution saying to somebody, well, just come along, we'll take up a flight training course and see how it goes. There has to be certainty that it's going to work both for the individual and for the flight training school as well too. So to that end, the assessment process is there, and it does a couple of things, as Tim explained, the breakdown of it with the CUT-E test and with the interview as well too. So CUT-E will help identify the qualifications, the aptitude of the individual, which is the first part and one of the most important parts of it. The second part then is the assessment, which in itself is broken into 2 parts, consisting of the SIM assessment. And again, as Tim said, I don't really want to repeat everything he said because he's covered it so perfectly. But essentially, it's a brief session to test the individual's hand-eye coordination ability to take instruction. So that's great. And the third part of it, which is very important, is the interview. So what's the interview made of? Well, you come to us and you say to us, we've got an interest in aviation. We'll demonstrate it. How long have you had that interest? How have you followed that interest? Is it online articles on YouTube videos, TV programs, books, magazines, whatever? Prove to us you have the interest, because if you're considering becoming a commercial pilot as a career, you've got to realize that the training is a huge commitment, and as a career choice, it's a huge commitment as well too. I certainly don't want to put anybody off, but you must come into it with your eyes open and realize that whereas you may have colleagues in school or friends outside school, whatever, who move on to professions, whether or jobs or careers or trades or whatever, where they're working Monday to Friday and they've got weekends off. As a commercial pilot, you won't have that. You're going to be working weekends, you'll have early starts, late finishes. And the only way you can deal with that is to say, well, that's what I signed up for. My office has the best view in the world. That's exactly what I want as a career choice. So you've got to know that's what you want to do, and you've got to convince us that's what it is as well too, because the course, both with the combination of the MTU element of it and our training element, is combined as a very, very intensive course as well too. So The interview will consist of the HR part of it. Tell us about yourself, your interest in aviation, work experience you've had, etc., etc. And then we'll dig into the technical side of it. Tell us how an airplane flies, what generates lift over a wing, mental maths questions, also a light level, nothing too in depth, but just enough to convince us that you have what it takes. Mental maths questions could be along the lines of, if you're flying at 120 miles an hour, what distance would you cover in 3.5 hours? Or if the distance from A to B is 500 miles and you're flying at 125 miles an hour, how long will the trip take? So it's mental maths. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to replace calculators. We just want to see how well you can assess information, because in aviation, as in all walks of life, we use calculators. But the difference for us is, if we make a mistake, the outcome could be a catastrophe. We didn't have enough fuel or whatever in our planning. So what we're doing is we have the ability to identify gross errors when we use calculators. So that completes the other element of the assessment. So at the end of it, we can say to the individual, we've reviewed your performance, and we're happy to say that you've made our grade to join the integrated program. Happy days. Now, Tim has mentioned the mentored programs, both with Ryanair and with Globair. Now, the way they work is that if we assess somebody and they pass our grade, that's great. But we have a certain benchmark they have to get over to join our program. If they get a higher benchmark result out of it, in other words, one that's acceptable to Ryanair and Globair, we can then put their details forward to those companies, whichever one they prefer, with a recommendation to the company that they would be considered for a mentored program. So the way that works is that we pass the details of the individual on to, whether it's Ryanair or Globair. They'll review the details. They'll come back to us within about a week, and they'll say, thank you, you've given us the details. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that we assess 8 people during the course of the week, and out of the 8, 6 make our grade. And of that 6, 4 make the grade for either Ryanair or Globair. We send the details into the relevant companies. They'll come back and say, okay, you've given us details of these people. We'll take on all of them, or we'll take on 2, we'll take on none. They'll have the final say. So if somebody is not accepted onto a mentored program, but they make our grade, they can still join us on the program anyway. And at the end of it, they're still quite entitled to apply to any of those companies as well. If, on the other hand, they are accepted on, say, I'll use Ryanair as an example, they're accepted on the Ryanair program, then they undergo the same amount of training with us, with the additional training provided by the company as well too. Now, that just brings me on to the question of cost. I'm not involved in the finance end of the business, but I do know that one of the headline numbers that you're all looking at is the cost of pilot training. It is not cheap. There's no two ways about that. You'll see the cost differences between our integrated program and the mentored programs. You're going to say, well, why are they more expensive? The reason is quite simple. On the mentored program, the respective airlines companies will also bring in some, or introduce some of their standard operating procedures, some of their company philosophies, delivered by their own personnel as well too. So there's an added content provided on their individual training courses as well too. And that's the reason for the cost. Now, again, sticking with the cost, because there's no point in trying to dance around this, but it is very expensive to train. You have to look at it in terms of what it provides as an investment. In other words, that the career, the job market certainly was in the doldrums during the pandemic, but it's bounced back dramatically. And consequently, the airlines are crying out for pilots. I'll give an example. Up to the pandemic, up to late 2019, for our graduates, the time from graduation to job placement was about between 6 weeks and 2 months. It was rapid, and starting salaries were good, and they were jumping into it. So on the one hand, they were spending a lot of money to become trained as qualified as commercial pilots. But on the other hand, they were starting careers pretty quickly on good salaries with very good promotion prospects. So in that sense, it was viewed as an investment. And if there were borrowings involved to pay for their training costs, then they were in a position to earn money pretty quickly and make the repayments as well too. So you have to look at the bigger picture. As I said, the market had dried up during the pandemic, but it has bounced back dramatically. And the demand for pilots has jumped exponentially since travel restrictions were lifted at the start of this year. So that's the background to the cost part of it. Moving on to that, then the training course itself, is pretty intense. It's having a commercial pilot's license is akin to having a third level qualification. And you will go to MTU and you will enjoy your first year on campus and have the campus experience. That'd be brilliant. When you come to the pilot training situation, a bit of a different approach with us. It's very intense. You don't have the opportunity to take as much time off. You have to be very focused on the training itself. And the course duration is in around 18 months. And of that 18 months, 6 months of that is spent in ground school. The ground school element is a huge part of it, and it's the part that people least look forward to because it is very academic and you're stuck in ground school Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. There's no escape. It's so intense that during that 6 month period, you don't go near an airplane. It's totally head in the books, get on with the exams. There are 13 subjects on the syllabus. They're broken up into modules of 2 months. So for example, you would start with us and the first 6 weeks to 2 months would be in basic pilot training, just to give you the direct experience of flying the aircraft, seeing the different components, the different elements of it, how it flies, etc. Then you launch into the ground school for 6 months. For the first 2 months, you'd be studying for 4 or 5 subjects. At the end of that 2 months, take the exams. Moving on to the next module of 2 months, where you study for the next 4 or 5 subjects. At the end of that period, then taking the exams. And then finishing up with the remaining 2 months with whatever subjects are outstanding, 4 or 5, whatever, and getting those done and dusted within 6 months. So you're back onto the flight line again and into your full-time training. Going through the single engine phase of training in the Cessna 172s, the multi-engine aircraft, most of which of the training is done in the DA-42 Diamonds, and then the final element, which is called APS-MCC. You will find in aviation that the industry is riddled with acronyms and abbreviations, and this is no exception. APS-MCC is Airline Preparation Standard for Multi-Crew Cooperation. So with your training, you can see from the images that were presented on the slides that the aircraft you're training in are small aircraft. They're 4, 6 seaters, whatever. It's a different sensation than moving into the environment of flying on the flight deck of an airliner. So the final part of the training bridges the gap between your experience of flying the small aircraft to get qualified and then before you start your type rating training with an airline. So what it does is 2 things. It introduces you to the layout of the cockpit of a 737, standard Boeing 737 aircraft, which is one of the more popular or most popular designs or make of aircraft flying globally at the moment. And also how to interact as a crew member. You're no longer a solo operator. You're no longer flying the aircraft just with the instructor. You're now a part of a team with the captain. And it's a very democratic environment on the flight deck of an aircraft. You're sharing the tasks between you. So the appreciation and awareness of how to interact with somebody is very important. And that's the final element of the training. So all the training is done and dusted, license is issued, and you head off then into your airline career. Now, Tim mentions the term type rating and the cost of it. And that's the next headline number that jumps off the slide as well too, 30,000. Here I am. I forked out the best part of 80-odd thousand in pilot training, and I have another 30,000. For what? When you graduate, you are qualified as a commercial pilot, but when you join an airline, they then have to train you to fly in their kind of aircraft. So this isn't because you're a brand new pilot, it's because you've no experience flying that type of aircraft. So for example, if you join Ryanair, their entire fleet consists of Boeing 737s. They have to train you to fly those. If you join Aer Lingus, all they fly is Airbuses, different airplane. Looks the same, but different aircraft. So they'll put you on a training course to fly their aircraft. The type rating training, I'll use Ryanair as the best example because they would be our biggest recruiters. But the type rating training is 30,000. Now, up to the pandemic, they were offering type rating training for 5,000, and they would cover the cost of 25,000, and they would bond you then for 5 years. So that was great because then you were committed, and at least you weren't faced with a big extra payment of 30,000. But then the pandemic came along and the airlines started to lose money, and they said they could no longer afford to part subsidize the type rating cost. So consequently, as things stand today, that's the figure you're looking for. So in other words, if somebody graduated today and they had an opportunity to join Ryanair next week or next month, whatever, that's the cost they'll be facing with. However, that is going to change because the demand for pilots is increasing and type rating costs are being reviewed by the airlines. And consequently, we know that they will start to reintroduce the subsidy scheme to some extent. Now, when we don't know, certainly in the next 6, 9, 12 months, to what extent, we don't know. Will it go back to what it was previously? Will it be 50-50, 75-25? We don't know, but it will be on the way back. So hopefully by the time anybody is committing to a course now or in the future, by the time they're in a position to apply to an airline, that subsidized option will be back on the table again too. But as things stand today, that's what it is. There's no point in trying to hide it. It is what it is, as they say. So that brings you up to the end of your training, and then you're in a position to apply for your airline job. Let's go back to what you do for the initial application itself. As Tim mentioned, you've got the assessment and you also have the medical. He also mentioned that the medical is provided at the Mater Private Hospital. It's the only accredited medical facility in the country that does that. It's a day-long process. And again, it checks out you medically. And again, as a colleague of mine said, if you can walk in and walk out, you're halfway there. There are a couple of little gotchas in it at the same time. If you're wearing glasses, it's no big deal. I wear glasses. I have a class of medical. It's not a problem. Once your glasses correct your vision to the normal range, that's fine. But it can pick up on things that conditions people wouldn't know they have. And the biggest example of that would be color blindness. You can go through life being colorblind unless it's tested for your job, or you just have it tested anyway, and not know you're colorblind. If you don't need it for your job, that's no problem. But it's very important in aviation because we have a lot of color coding with instruments and with lighting systems as well too. So color vision is very important. Now, I'm not a medical person, but apparently you can't go colorblind. You either are or you're not. But again, it would be tested. And once you've passed that initial assessment, you're issued with the class of medical. Now, a class of medical is valid for 12 months. You can see that the medical doesn't last as long as your course does. So for example, if you undertook the medical, let's say in April of 2023, and you joined a course in September 2023, or whenever, that the course lasts longer than the medical does. If you don't renew a class one within 12 months, it automatically drops down to a class 2. And that's the level of medical that a PPL holder would have, and a private pilot's license holder. And it's what you can keep during your training. In other words, you don't have to renew the class 1 until all your training is completed, because the class 2 is valid for 5 years. So you don't have to go back to renew the medical until all the training is done. You apply to the IAA to get your license issued. At that stage, then you go back and get the medical renewed. And with the renewal, then you have options. You may go back to the Mater to do that, but there are other qualified practitioners around the country who are qualified to conduct the renewal phase of the medical as well too. So that's the kind of the broad background to it. As a career choice, it's brilliant, but bear in mind that it's something you must have an absolute desire to do as a career, because it's so different to what other people do as well too. So I hope that's given you a little bit of flesh on the bones, and it's given you a bit of an extra insight to what's involved. Again, thanks to Tim, because he's provided a very comprehensive presentation of exactly what's involved. And hopefully at the end of it, then you'll have a lot of information to help you make an informed decision, and make the decision to come into pilot training with a degree as well too, as an additional qualification. So at this stage, I think I'll just be handing over to my colleague, Holly Corboy. On the one hand, it's great for someone like me to tell you about the options about pilot training and what we provide. But I think what's nearly more important is to speak to somebody who is enjoying that experience themselves at the moment as well too. So I'd like to hand over to Holly, and she'll give a little bit of insight into her own experience to date as well too. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. I actually think Holly has just dropped off the call or off the webinar. She's just after, I think she's internet problems. So what we might do is we might move on to the Q&A.
Sure.
And if Holly can get back in, we can maybe come back to her experiences. So just before we move on to the Q&A, I just like to, I suppose, highlight that there are a lot of benefits to this course, in the sense that I think it's important if for maybe a lot of younger pilots, it gives them a year to mature. It gives them the college experience. And importantly, it gives a bit of a safety net that if something ever does go wrong in terms of your flying career, that you have a university degree to fall back on. And I suppose another big benefit is the need for a university degree for a lot of career progression in terms of the aviation industry. So there are a lot of benefits to this. And if there are any questions about anything, I'd be delighted to answer them, even though I have a feeling that a lot of these questions will be going to you, Philip. Generally, the AFTA questions are the ones we get the most of. People maybe not as interested as the MTU side of things. So I just need to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see the Q&A. So just bear with me for a second. Okay, so we have some questions coming in there. So I suppose I'll just start answering these as they come up. So the first one, are there any scholarship options for this? Unfortunately, there are not. This is nothing to do with AFTA or nothing to do with MTU. Unfortunately, this is a government decision, and the government have decided that this is not covered by the SUSI grant. So unfortunately, no, there are no scholarship options available. As of now, we're hoping that down the line, this may change. So that's the first question. Holly has just made contact. Unfortunately, she's having camera and mic issues. So unfortunately, I don't think she'll be able to speak tonight. Okay, so another question, is it possible to begin the assessment process this year, as in this month or next month? So if I pass down to Philip.
Yes, certainly they come and do the assessment anytime. But bear in mind that the assessment result is valid for 12 months. So I think if somebody's considering this, they need to look at how they can work out the timing for the assessment in terms of joining the MTU course as well too. So certainly by all means, they want to do it now, that's okay. But will they get the full benefit of it? It depends. As I said, it's what the sort of time scale that most people would look at would be to come into it maybe early in the new year with a view then to applying to the MTU course later in the year once they get the leaving cert results and know where they stand with their points as well too.
Okay, so actually good news, Holly is just after sorting her camera mic. So what we might do is just, if people want to take a couple of minutes to type in their questions, we might go to Holly, and then when we come back, there should be a little bank of questions that we could answer. So I'm just going to pass you on to Holly.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Just want to double check that you can hear me.
Yeah, hi Holly.
Yeah, sorry, I thought the phone was causing trouble. So I'm Holly, I am a Ryanair mentor student, and Philip and Tim gave you loads of information, all the information you could probably need, but I'm going to talk you through my experience so far. So I started in MTU last year alongside 4 others. We were the first group to start. It was a small crowd. Now, Tim gave you all the details and all the modules, but so from our point of view, I didn't do higher maths or anything like that. So it was all very, very manageable. The IT, the CIT, the accounting wouldn't be a #1 fan, but again, it was very, very manageable. And well, everybody was well able for it, the marketing, the global business, all of it. And we roughly had about 20 to 25 hours a week. So it wasn't anything too mad. And again, we could take time out as well to kind of start looking into AFTA, looking into aviation, maybe getting a little read ahead on some PPL subjects. And even we went and visited AFTA a good few times, and we were very lucky to go up in the Piper one day. So AFTA were very, very accommodating to us and having us up with them and getting to chat with everybody and seeing what our future was going to hold for us. So there's not much aviation in the first year, but again, as I said, it's so manageable that you can kind of get into all the aviation side of things yourself and kind of start looking into what maybe your future you want, what career, what path you want to choose. So that was great. Another opportunity to get a head start, as I said, on the ground school, if it was something you were interested in, because it might be a little bit daunting going into it, especially if you've no previous flight experience. So that's another great thing to have, kind of less hours than a lot of other courses. What I would say about MTU is the staff were more than helpful with us. We were quite a small group. We were in with another group, the Biblia students. They were doing a language and business. And the staff were very accommodating to us if we needed to go to AFTA for a trip or anything like that. And if we needed a little bit of help, even asking for grinds and accounting and all that stuff, staff came back to us straight away with loads of options for us. So that was very good. And it was great as well to get grouped in a more relaxed environment. As Philip said, you know, it can be very hard and very full on once you start your training. So it was great for us as a small group to come together and kind of get to know each other and see how everybody works in a smaller environment and a more relaxed environment, which was again invaluable for us. I now live with two of the other girls from my course and we're like best friends and we all help each other. We're self-studying at the minute, so it's very good to be very comfortable and friends with people beforehand. Again, it's not necessary, but it certainly does help. So then Philip talked you through the interview and the prep and all that kind of stuff. So you don't need much prior experience of knowledge, but you do need a passion and you do need to be able to show that this is something you want to do. You know, it's not for everybody, but it's certainly so rewarding. And if it's something that you want to do, it will come across, it will shine, you know, they'll see it in you. So I wouldn't be too intimidated by the interview or anything like that. It was really nice getting to talk and showing, you know, the knowledge that you'd acquired and all that kind of stuff. Very no flight experience friendly as well. So just show that you're willing to listen, willing to learn, and you'll be absolutely fine. Just know some of the basics, as Philip said, you know, basic principles of flight, and you'll be fine. So we started AFTA in June, as you will as well, and our timing couldn't be any better. You know, we started in June, we had 10 days of intensive ground school, covered all 9 subjects, and it sounds daunting. It wasn't too bad. So we covered all 9 subjects in the 10 days. And I would just say to keep on top of it. I know you'll probably hear it 1,000 times, but just keep on top of it. And then we got straight into the flying, no delays. I think we might have had a day for ops to get our names on, and we were straight in. So you begin flying in Cork. Again, the basics, whether you've had experience or not. I had 20 hours. One of my classmates had none, and we did our solo in the same week. You know, it doesn't matter where you come from or what your background is. So as you're flying, I would really recommend the constant refreshing of the ground school. It's perishable material. It's not stuff you hear every single day. So I would definitely recommend to keep on top of it. And again, the college experience gives you that, you know, you have to go home and you have to do study and you have to do work. Although the flying is so much fun, I would really, really recommend to kind of stay on top of it. And being able to fly out of an airport like Cork as well is invaluable to get the busy radio, to get all the procedures. I flew out of a small airfield, so flying out of Cork was very different, but it was great to get the discipline and the professionalism and everything like that you need. And then you move on to Waterford to do your solo stuff. So we moved down to Waterford. We were there for about 2 months, I think. The weather wasn't playing ball, even though it's the summer, but we did all of our solo stuff. I have a solo triangle left to complete. I had to come back for my PPL exams, but it was great down there. You know, it's quieter, but you still have all the professionalism and all the practice of the radio for down in Waterford. And yeah, it's just such a great experience to do your solo, and it's a beautiful county as well. So if the weather isn't playing ball and you've your study done for the day, there's loads of swimming options down in Waterford. And again, AFTA houses down there, I think it's €3 a day. You pay for the rent, you know, just for the electricity and stuff. And as far as housing, Sharon is like everybody's mother. She looks after us all and she'll really help you out to the best of her ability with housing. But again, there is a housing crisis and she can't do too much about that. So I would always recommend to keep an eye out for stuff on Daft and that kind of thing, to help yourself as well as help Sharon as well. She looks after us all. But as Tim was saying, we are still MTU students. So I'm currently self-studying for exams and we still use the library. You have to get out of the house some days. So we still go to the library at MTU and we use the facilities there, which is great because the public libraries can be really loud, and it's nice to go back to a familiar environment and the nice coffee lady on campus and go back and study there. So that's kind of it. I'm not too far in yet, but I'm having a great time, and the fleet is amazing. You know, everything is top notch, and you always feel so comfortable if you had a problem to go talk to anybody, especially Philip. as our safety manager, and all the guys in maintenance are so helpful. If you have any concerns whatsoever, you know, safety is #1 priority when you're flying. So everybody just is so comfortable around each other, and all the instructors as well are great. And once you come prepared and kind of know what you're getting yourself into, again, as Tim said, it's a very elite profession. And even though a lot of us are young, we still have to, you know our stuff and go in and put safety first. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, but you have to remember that it is a career at the end of the day, and you know, the work and the dedication. If you're off self-studying for 2 months, you have to put in the hours. But that will only help you further on in your career. So I don't think I've too much other things, but if there's any questions, I'll be delighted to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Holly. That was excellent. And I suppose just to add on something that has happened since Holly moved on to year 2 in AFTA is that our current first years have actually set up an aviation society. So they've kindly invited themselves to the AFTA sim, which they're going to this Thursday morning. And they're all getting, I suppose, about 20 to 30 minutes, which will be a takeoff, a quick circuit and a landing each on the sim. And actually, some of them went to Toulouse to an aviation museum last week. So that was done through the Aviation Society, which had partial funding for that trip. So there are a lot of benefits to that as well. And obviously, you can have some fun with it. And it's good to be with like-minded people. So I'm glad to say there are some more questions that have come in. So I just let them load up. So I just get down to the next one. And obviously, if you want a question specifically aimed at Holly or Philip, that you can just write that in as well. So what sort of maths would we be doing? Because I'm not great at Leaving Cert maths. I'm pretty good at like basic maths. That's perfect. So you don't need Leaving Cert maths. It's a lot of it is basic maths. So it's nothing that will catch you out, but you do need a certain level of maths. And I was talking to another instructor recently who said that it's really looking at it's sort of junior cert level maths. It's a type of maths that you're dealing with. So I don't think you don't definitely need honors maths. Now, if you have honors maths, it would be helpful, but it does need to be at high level maths. So the next question: do you pay the whole 82,500 upfront to AFTA, or would it be possible to pay over a couple of months? So as far as I'm aware, that's done in installments. Jenna will have more information there, so I'm going to pass you to Jenna.
Yeah, no problem. So the 82,000 or the same rule applies for all of our integrated programs, basically. So once you pass your assessment, we ask that you put down a €2,000 deposit to secure your space in the class. And from there, then the remainder of your payment is split up into 3 payments, which is paid on week 1 of your training with AFTA, week 20 of your training, and week 40 of your training. So just to recap, a €2,000 deposit, and then the remainder split up into 3 installments.
Thanks, Jenna. So moving on to the next question, would I be guaranteed a job at Ryanair if I do their mentor program? So you're not guaranteed a job, but you are fast tracked to the front of their queue for new hirees. And I think Philip might confirm this, but I think everyone who has done a mentor program so far has ended up working for the airline.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it's one of the attractions of the mentor program. In fact, it's the biggest attraction of the whole lot. That's subject to a final assessment. There's a guaranteed place on a type rating course, which effectively means the guaranteed job for the individual. So it takes if we take that the job market itself has picked up tremendously, so we know the prospects are pretty good. But if somebody is on that program, they have that extra assurance that they'll be moving on to their careers pretty quickly. So once they've passed that final assessment, then they're in the door on onto the type rating training, which means they're in employment with Ryanair thereafter as well too.
Thanks, Philip. So the next question, is there a graduate entry route as well, or solely just for CEO entry? So the entry for this is all done through the CEO, but you do have a mature student entry, which is 23 and over, and you still apply through the CEO, but it doesn't take into account your leaving cert points because you are a mature student. And all that information can be found on the CEO website. Or if you have any problems, you can also email me, and that goes for any questions tonight or any questions you may not ask now and you may think of later. You can just email aviation@mtu.ie and I'll get back to you. So the next question, would students who do not opt for one of the mentor programs have any difficulty finding employment once qualified? So I think what Philip mentioned already is the fact that this industry is booming and that there's a need for pilots. So I might let Philip talk a little bit more about that, just to go into a bit more detail.
Thanks, Tim. I gave an indication of what the time from graduation to job placement was before the pandemic hit, and things kind of ground to a halt then over the duration of the pandemic, and they've come out the other side of it. So we do know that the market has picked up dramatically, certainly since the beginning of this year. And what had happened was that a lot of the airlines, because they were cost cutting at the outset, they let their pilots go, and the pilots drifted off into other careers, or when the business picked up, they went to other airlines, or for pilots of a certain age. Retirement age for a commercial pilot is 65. So for anybody coming into it in their early mid-20s or 30s, whatever, they've got a long career ahead of them. But for people who had finished their jobs or lost their jobs during the pandemic, people in their early 60s, a lot of them decided, look, I'll call it a day at this stage. I've had 30 or 40 years of a great career, and I'll start calling the pension early. And that created gaps then. When the market picked up, that created gaps at the top, which meant that people who were already in the industry were getting promoted faster as well too. And with all those, for those various reasons, the job market has picked up tremendously. So of course, we're speaking as things stand today. I mean, who knows if there was another pandemic in 2 years' time, what we'd be facing. But bear in mind the experience that aviation's always had. If you go back through the decades, it's always had its challenges. Going back, I can remember back in the 70s when there was an oil crisis, oil embargoes, and all of a sudden aviation was very quiet. And then during the 80s and 90s, there were various financial crises and terrorist activity, and one thing or another affected the airline industry. But it's very resilient, and every time it bounces back, because during those episodes, the demand for flying hasn't gone. The opportunity has gone, but not the demand for it. And people want to fly, they want to travel. And because of that, then there's always a pent-up demand. When things pick up, then the market picks up and people want to get flying. So the demand for pilots is there. So the career prospects are fantastic as well too. So generally speaking, if you look across the span of a career over 30, 40 years, you recognize there were times up and down. But every time there was a problem that hit it, it always got back up, and it went on to new heights after that as well too, literally. So it's overall it's as a career choice, once you have the passion for it, which is the number one prerequisite, everything else will follow, and the job prospects will be good as well too.
Thanks, Philip. And I think as well with this course is the fact that you have your global business honours degree to fall back on if something does happen.
Absolutely.
It gives a bit more stability as well. So that is a benefit of this course, that you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So the last question that's currently there. So if anyone would like to ask any questions, I suppose get them in. But the question is, do Irish banks, credit unions offer student loans large enough to cover the cost of this course? So I think it's very much subjective. Currently, a lot of students have split it. Some get loans and cover the cost of savings. Some work for a little while. It is very dependent on the individual and your own circumstances in terms of loans, I think. So it's quite hard to answer that in terms of an overall answer, as it is very subjective. So that is the last question that has come in. So unless anything comes in the next couple of seconds, I'd just like to take this time to thank Jenna, Philip and Holly for their expertise and their really, really great insights into AFTA. I hope everyone here enjoyed and took something away from this evening. And I'd also like to highlight the fact that if you have any questions, you can please email myself at aviation@mtu.ie. And if you do need to get in contact with Jenna, the email is previously highlighted. Jenna, you might remind us of that, please.
Yeah, it's info@afta.ie. I'll pop it in the chat here now so you can see it as well. Perfect.
And a late question late questions come in. So so this is just regarding a course with managing airports. So unfortunately, we do offer 3 courses in the aviation sector here at MTU. This one tonight is the one for aspiring pilots, and the other two are aimed at pilots who are coming back to education. So unfortunately, no, we don't offer anything in terms of managing airports on that. So that email is now in chat, and as I said, the other one is aviation@mtu.ie, and I'll be delighted to answer any questions that you may have. So I think that's it. Once again, thank you for everyone for your time, including the panelists, and for all our attendees tonight as well. So I hope to see or hear from you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Bye.
That was great. Thank you. Bye-bye.